"My story," said the third calender, "is quite different from those of my two friends. It was fate that deprived them of the sight of their right eyes, but mine was lost by my own folly. My name is Ajib, and I am the son of a king called Kasib, who reigned over a large kingdom, which had for its capital one of the finest seaport towns in the world. When I succeeded to my father's throne, my first care was to visit the provinces on the mainland, and then to sail to the numerous islands which lay off the shore, in order to gain the hearts of my subjects. These voyages gave me such a taste for sailing that I soon determined to explore more distant seas, and commanded a fleet of large ships to be got ready without delay. When they were properly fitted out, I embarked on my expedition. For 40 days, wind and weather were all in our favor, but the next night, a terrific storm arose, which blew us hither and thither for 10 days, till the pilot confessed that he had quite lost his bearings. Accordingly, a sailor was sent up to the masthead to try to catch a sight of land, and he reported that nothing was to be seen but the sea and sky, except a huge mass of blackness that lay astern. On hearing this, the pilot grew white, and beating his breast, he cried, "Oh, sir, we are lost, lost," till the ship's crew trembled that they knew not what. When he had recovered himself a little, and was able to explain the cause of his terror, he replied, in answer to my question, that we had drifted far out of our course, and that the following day about noon we should come near that mass of darkness, which, said he, is nothing but the famous Black Mountain. This mountain is composed of adamant, which attracts to itself all the iron and nails in your ship, and as we are helplessly drawn nearer, the force of attraction will become so great that the iron and nails will fall out of the ships and cling to the mountain, and the ships will sink to the bottom with all that are in them. This it is that causes the side of the mountain towards the sea to appear of such a dense blackness. As may be supposed, continued the pilot, the mountain sides are very rugged, but on the summit stands a brass dome supported on pillars, and bearing on top the figure of a brass horse, with a rider on his back. This rider wears a breastplate of lead, on which strange signs and figures are engraved, and it is said that as long as this statue remains on the dome, vessels will never cease to perish at the foot of the mountain. So saying, the pilot began to weep afresh, and the crew, fearing their last hour had come, made their wills, each one in favor of his fellow. At noon the next day, as the pilot had foretold, we were so near to the Black Mountain that we saw all the nails and iron fly out of the ships and dash themselves against the mountain with a horrible noise. A moment after, the vessels fell asunder and sank, the crews with them. I alone managed to grasp a floating plank and was driven ashore by the wind without even a scratch. What was my joy on finding myself at the bottom of some steps which led straight up the mountain, for there was not another inch to the right or the left where a man could set his foot. And indeed, even the steps themselves were so narrow and so steep that, if the lightest breeze had arisen, I should certainly have been blown into the sea. When I reached the top, I found the brass dome and the statue exactly as the pilot had described, but was too wearied with all I had gone through to do more than glance at them, and flinging myself under the dome, was asleep in an instant. In my dreams, an old man appeared to me and said, "Hearken, Ajib. As soon as thou art awake, dig up the ground underfoot, and thou shalt find a bow of brass and 3 arrows of lead. Shoot the arrows at the statue, and the rider shall tumble into the sea, but the horse will fall down by thy side, and thou shalt bury him in the place from which thou tookest the bow and arrows. This being done, the sea will rise and cover the mountain, and on it thou wilt perceive the figure of a metal man seated in a boat, having an oar in each hand. Step on board and let him conduct thee. But if thou wouldest behold thy kingdom again, see that thou takest not the name of Allah into thy mouth." Having uttered these words, the vision left me, and I woke, much comforted. I sprang up and drew the bow and arrows out of the ground, and with the 3rd shot, the horseman fell with a great crash into the sea, which instantly began to rise so rapidly that I had hardly time to bury the horse before the boat approached me. I stepped silently in and sat down, and the metal man pushed off and rode without stopping for 9 days, after which land appeared on the horizon. I was so overcome with joy at this sight that I forgot all the old man had told me and cried out, "Allah be praised! Allah be praised!" The words were scarcely out of my mouth when the boat and man sank from beneath me and left me floating on the surface. All that day and the next night I swam and floated alternately, making as well as I could for the land which was nearest to me. At last, my strength began to fail, and I gave myself up for lost, when the wind suddenly rose, and a huge wave cast me on a flat shore. Then, placing myself in safety, I hastily spread my clothes out to dry in the sun, and flung myself on the warm ground to rest. The next morning I dressed myself and began to look about me. There seemed to be no one but myself on the island, which was covered with fruit trees and watered with streams, but seemed a long distance from the mainland which I hoped to reach. Before, however, I had time to feel cast down, I saw a ship making directly for the island, and not knowing whether it would contain friends or foes, I hid myself in the thick branches of a tree. The sailors ran the ship into a creek, where 10 slaves landed, carrying spades and pickaxes. In the middle of the island, they stopped, and after digging some time, lifted up what seemed to be a trapdoor. They then returned to the vessel 2 or 3 times for furniture and provisions, and finally were accompanied by an old man, leading a handsome boy of 14 or 15 years of age. They all disappeared down the trapdoor, and after remaining below for a few minutes came up again, but without the boy, and let down the trapdoor, covering it with earth as before. This done, they entered the ship and set sail. As soon as they were out of sight, I came down from my tree and went to the place where the boy had been buried. I dug up the earth till I reached a large stone with a ring in the center. This, when removed, disclosed a flight of stone steps that led to a large room richly furnished and lighted by tapers. On a pile of cushions, covered with tapestry, sat the boy. He looked up, startled and frightened at the sight of a stranger in such a place, and to soothe his fears, I at once spoke, "Be not alarmed, sir, whoever you may be. I am a king and the son of a king, and will do you no hurt. On the contrary, perhaps I have been sent here to deliver you out of this tomb, where you have been buried alive." Hearing my words, the young man recovered himself, and when I had ended, he said, "The reasons, Prince, that have caused me to be buried in this place are so strange that they cannot but surprise you. My father is a rich merchant, owning much land and many ships, and has great dealings in precious stones, but he never ceased mourning that he had no child to inherit his wealth. At length, one day he dreamed that the following year a son would be born to him, and when this actually happened, he consulted all the wise men in the kingdom as to the future of the infant. One and all they said the same thing. I was to live happily till I was 15, when a terrible danger awaited me, which I should hardly escape. If, however, I should succeed in doing so, I should live to a great old age. And they added, when the statue of the brass horse on the top of the mountain of adamant is thrown into the sea by Ajib, the son of Kasib, then beware, for 50 days later your son shall fall by his hand. This prophecy struck the heart of my father with such woe that he never got over it, but that did not prevent him from attending carefully to my education till I attained, a short time ago, my 15th birthday. It was only yesterday that the news reached him that 10 days previously the statue of brass had been thrown into the sea, and he at once set about hiding me in this underground chamber, which was built for the purpose, promising to fetch me out when the 40 days have passed. For myself, I have no fears, as Prince Ajib is not likely to come here to look for me. I listened to his story with an inward laugh as to the absurdity of my ever wishing to cause the death of this harmless boy, whom I hastened to assure of my friendship and even of my protection, begging him, in return, to convey me in his father's ship to my own country. The moment I had finished speaking, the door burst open with a loud noise, and the old man rushed in with a drawn sword, followed by his slaves, who seized me and tied me fast. "You may wonder at this," said he, "but it is no less strange than true that I have just learned that you are Ajib, the son of Kasib, and that it is in your hand alone that my son's fate lies. Therefore, receive your death at once and deliver us from a terrible alarm." Again I entreated, and even offered to renounce my crown, if he would only spare me, but in vain. "Do what you will," he said, "were you to offer me all the treasures of the earth. I could not believe you. My son shall not die. Only a miracle can save you." And, indeed, a miracle did, for at that instant the old man fell lifeless at my feet, struck down by a sudden and most mysterious blow. When the slaves saw this, they took to their heels, and I at once set free the young man, who was almost beside himself with joy at his unexpected deliverance. We buried the old man with all proper solemnities, and to show his gratitude, the son declared his intention of accompanying me to my kingdom, and bringing with him all the treasure that the chamber contained. This he did, and I brought him safely to my capital, where I told my story, which was found so entertaining that it has been handed down to posterity.